Hi all, my name is Colin Lacey and I'm the co-founder and CEO of MakerUSA. My colleague and MakerUSA's co-founder and president, Dr. Stephanie Santoso, and I are deeply honored to have the opportunity to share with you today at what we know is such an important event for the Baltimore community. We hope through today's session to be able to highlight how maker education can be leveraged as a tool to foster innovation and economic inclusion, and to also share some additional background on the how and the why of the new organization that Dr. Santos and I have launched called MakerUSA, share more about its model, and also what we think could be some interesting ways and opportunities for it to support your important efforts in the Baltimore community. Previously, I was the executive director of an initiative called Makers and Mentors Network. This was an organization housed within a national nonprofit called Citizen Schools. We launched the effort, and I had the opportunity to serve in a leading role starting in 2013. We launched at the time in partnership with the Obama administration's White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, really with a goal to seed a network of STEM and maker ecosystems all across the country. So these were communities where school districts, local community-based nonprofits, companies, public offices were coming together to align around a common vision for how to scale high quality STEM and maker education within their communities. That network is now serving over 200,000 predominantly underrepresented youth. I've had the opportunity to serve in leadership roles in several educational startups. Prior to that, I've been working in the education equity field for a little over 10 years now. And now I'll pass it to Steph.
Hi, everyone. I'm Steph Santoso and the co-founder and president of MakerUSA. Most recently, I served as the managing director for Makers and Mentors Network at Citizen Schools, working closely with Colin. And I'm also currently a senior program fellow at Infosys Foundation USA, which supports education at the intersection of computer science and maker education. From 2014 to 2016, I served as the first senior advisor for making at the White House, where I helped to develop President Obama's Nation of Makers initiative, which was really focused on broadening access to the maker movement and access to maker education. I was previously part of the advisory council for California Community College's CCC Maker initiative, and my PhD research focused on the social impact of 3D printing. So if we could go to the next slide. I wanted to just briefly review what we'll be covering today in our talk and in our discussion with you. So we're excited to talk about the role that maker ecosystems can play in fostering economic mobility and innovation through expanded access to maker education and entrepreneurship opportunities. And we're already seeing this take place in West Baltimore, but we'd also like to share how other communities are uniquely approaching this as well across the US. And for today, we felt like it was important first to ground in our why do we think this work is important, and then highlight some of the challenges that maker ecosystems can address locally, regionally, and also nationally. And then we'll spend some time focusing on what these ecosystems look like and how the work we're doing through MakerUSA aims to support social mobility and community-driven innovation through much needed critical talent and capacity. We'll highlight some examples, resources, and best practices from the field when it comes to both community partnerships as well as ecosystem development. Community partnerships really fuel ecosystem development and sustainability. And then we'll transition to discussing how the work you're doing may contribute to maker ecosystem building in your own community. So if we could go to the next slide. I wanted to take a minute to spend a little time talking about maker education and why it's so important. Maker education experiences provide students really with that opportunity to explore their world through designing, through hacking, building, prototyping, and experimenting. It's incredibly hands-on. It's really about taking things that students and youth are learning, and creating opportunities for them to apply those in the world around them. Maker education really puts the student at the center of the learning experience. And through these experiences, youth really have that opportunity to develop their curiosity, their skills, skills like open-ended problem solving, collaboration, persistence, and creative confidence. And this type of learning is always really interdisciplinary, which I think is a really important aspect of this type of learning to call out. So, you know, it not only involves STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, but it also cuts across design and the arts. If we could go to the next slide. So many of you have been focused on creating local ecosystems that support maker education, maker entrepreneurs, community-based problem solving, and maybe enabling the growth of local manufacturing. And really, maker ecosystems are so incredibly important to creating communities where everyone can thrive, so inclusive communities. When we look at the most robust ecosystems, the ones that continue to grow really have several key characteristics, and these are really key to sustainability. So this includes creating opportunities for a wide variety of stakeholders to participate and engage in building these ecosystems. So community members really playing an active role in identifying what they need, what the community needs, and then having a role in identifying and developing the solutions within those ecosystems. Ensuring that previously marginalized and underserved groups and community members are invited to participate. So even before you have stakeholders and individuals involved in building those ecosystems, you really need to invite those individuals and organizations to the table. And so creating that environment where there is this open door, where previously marginalized groups really feel like they have an opportunity to participate and have their voice heard. And then developing deep and sustainable cross-sector and public-private partnerships. So in order for these partnerships to develop and for an ecosystem to thrive, at the center of the ecosystem are really people, people who are developing and implementing programs, supporting individual entrepreneurs, and bringing community stakeholders together to solve shared challenges. In our experience working with underserved communities across the US, human talent and capacity is one, if not the most important need that communities have to accomplish these goals. In West Baltimore, you already have a really vibrant maker ecosystem that is continuing to grow. It's actually really exemplary for communities across the country. And in large part, that's due to the dedication of many different key stakeholders and community partners who are really focused and committed to supporting maker entrepreneurs and creating opportunities for students to engage in maker-centered learning, not just in their K-12 education experience, but into their post-secondary education experience as well. And then, you know, you also have community partners that are really actively creating spaces for members to come together and prototype solutions to community challenges. Coppin State University's collaboration with OpenWorks is a really wonderful example of a partnership that is fueling this ecosystem. This also includes the work that your community has done to leverage policy. More specifically, the Makerspace Initiative pilot program is pending legislation, which would provide funding for the creation of makerspaces across the state of Maryland. And that legislation was developed and led in Baltimore. So I'll turn it over to Colin now to talk more about why building these ecosystems to foster maker education, entrepreneurship, and community-led innovation is so important.
Thanks so much, Steph. Before getting into the MakerUSA model, and I think some different examples of ways we think the model could potentially support efforts within the West Baltimore and Greater Baltimore community, we really wanted to ground in the why behind our work within a national context and talk about some of the data points that are driving our approach. I think one of the things we were reflecting on is we recognize that this event is an economic inclusion focused conference. And so audience is acutely aware of our nation's challenges and significant deficits to equality and inclusion. But nonetheless, we wanted to ground in our why behind the work as it drives our model. So one of the national data points that we often look to is what has become a continually declining social mobility in the United States, to the point where today the majority of young people will be economically worse off than their parents, as measured by lifetime earnings. And then you couple that with a data point from an innovation standpoint, which is that parental wealth is in fact more important than interest and aptitude in determining who becomes an inventor. We know that children born into the wealthiest 1% are 10 times more likely to become inventors than those who are born in the bottom 50%. We often think about sort of this interconnected set of data points that are painting a picture for social mobility challenges, the continued challenges to access and opportunity as it relates to economic growth, individual growth, and as well as innovation in the United States. So a couple of those: by the 6th grade, children from low-income families will have had 6,000 less hours of academic enrichment than their middle and upper income peers. Students from the upper 20% in parental wealth that perform below average in math are still more likely to become inventors than students who perform in the bottom, from students who are in the bottom 20% of parental income, but actually perform above average in math. And at the current rate, it will take 118 years for women to make up 50% of our inventors. Meanwhile, and I know this is an important part of literature shared as part of the conference, the median annual wage for Black workers is approximately 30%, or $10,000 lower than that of white workers, which has enormous implications for household economic security and the ability to build generational wealth. We also know that only 1% of business financing of $100,000 or more goes to Black-owned businesses. And meanwhile, on the new business development front, new businesses, which are the primary engines for new job creation, firms that are less than 6 years old, have continued to decline since 1980. And in 2020, the United States was running an all-time high trade deficit as it relates to advanced technology products. And we see all of these inequities across race, gender, and educational access as ultimately being very interconnected to our challenge when it comes to innovation, new business creation, as well as overall competitiveness. We often will sort of think of a metaphor of a dam where the vast majority of the water is held back, only about a quarter of that water is coming through. And this is essentially the ideas and innovation river in the United States. And it's made up of systemic barriers based on race, gender, geography, income, and access to capital. And economists are now estimating that if women, people of color, and children from low-income families became inventors at the same rate as men from high-income families, innovation in the United States would quadruple. As we think about our work and the connection to these national challenges, we also know that maker education specifically is at the heart of innovation and entrepreneurship. Meanwhile, as we think about the institutions that can serve as hubs for regional innovations, community colleges, technical colleges, minority serving colleges and universities, rural serving universities, and community-based orgs, we see these institutions as being the central hubs for unleashing all of our collective ideas and ultimately being the primary drivers for innovation within a community and within a region. And as Steph was sharing earlier, human capacity and talent is really central to being able to unlock that full potential. We've been working with a network that has included many post-secondary institutions that are investing in maker education as a vehicle to drive innovation and to drive entrepreneurship opportunities for their students. And when we've asked them, when we've done surveying on the number one challenge to expanding that work, they've cited human capacity and talent at the top of that list. And there are significant investments happening within the space. In 2015, there were approximately 150 maker spaces on college campuses. Today, there's only over 500 spaces on college campuses, but there is still significant deficits and capacity gaps when it comes to supporting individual students on their own unique pathway into both local business and into entrepreneurship pathways. And that's really the origins for the MakerUSA model, which I'll share a little bit more about. And then Steph will share some examples of some of the partners that have submitted early letters of interest to this model. So MakerUSA is an incubated initiative currently within the National Association for Community College Entrepreneurship. NACCE is our parent organization, which is an amazing national and actually across North America organization that includes over 300 post-secondary institutions within their network. Our model and our focus through MakerUSA is to build community capacity to leverage maker education as this vehicle for career pathways into local businesses and into entrepreneurship. And to do that, what we'll be doing is we will be embedding full-time, uniquely trained and very well supported program managers at what we call innovation sites. So innovation sites could be a college or a university. They could also be a local community-based makerspace or professional-based makerspace. They could be an organization supporting public housing within a community or supporting workforce development within a community as well. Ultimately, the program manager's role is designed based on specific goals that that community has defined. And we'll talk to some of those examples on the upcoming slide. And we're specifically focused on partnering within the communities that have been most marginalized by the systemic barriers to access and opportunity that we were discussing on some of the earlier slides. So program managers will be working on community-defined goals and projects. They will be receiving unique and specialized training from both our staff as well as some of our national strategic partners. We're working with organizations like the Urban Manufacturing Alliance, Forward Cities, which is an organization focused on equitable entrepreneurship, among others. And program managers will ultimately kind of focus on three primary areas. And these will be, again, determined by the community, by the partnering organization. So some examples of those. We have maker program builders as kind of one focus area and theme, which is where projects might be designing a new maker space or program or supporting the expansion of an existing space or program. There could be efforts to make an existing space more inclusive, better connected to community-based organizations or K-12 partnerships, or develop stronger partnerships with local businesses that can create direct pathways for students that are using the space. Another focus area for our program managers will be student career pathways. So we've heard from many institutions and partners a need to provide individual guidance to student makers that may be using a space on resources that may already exist for entrepreneurship training and support, or access to local incubators, local mentorship programs, or other courses that a college or a local partner may have for individual students that are looking to pursue entrepreneurship pathways. And so our program managers will have the ability to serve in a one-on-one role that can support that as well. And then ecosystem building will be another theme and focus area for our program managers. So this could be focused on increasing coordination across post-secondary institutions that may be within a specific geography, across local businesses, local chambers of commerce, and other entrepreneurship supporting organizations, and really strengthening the network that is supporting these kind of outcomes. Also connecting with small batch and advanced manufacturing ecosystems that may exist within a community, and strengthening connections with local public offices. So we have some really interesting work that's happening at both the city level in communities across the country, as well as the state level. And Steph shared a wonderful example of Maryland specific leadership in this work as well. And then our program managers will be connected and collaborating through a national learning network. So they'll be part of a network of managers across the country where they are learning and sharing with each other while receiving ongoing consultation and support from MakerUSA's national staff, as well as other field level experts. And I think this is one of the things we're really excited for that collaboration to lead to cross-pollination of ideas, and also collaborations across communities and across geographies. Our learning net will create opportunities for innovation sites to also connect with peers from across the country and across a region. And we're excited for that to facilitate new ideas and new collaborations, and to uplift the leadership of the kinds of organizations that are leading this important work. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic to Steph to share some examples of the letters of interest that have come in already. So we'll be formally launching, well, this in a couple weeks from the time of this recording, the week before the conference. And we've been in conversations with what's been to date a close hold network of partners, and then we'll be publicly launching, and we'll be really excited for members of the Baltimore community to explore and consider ways that this model could potentially support your efforts. And I hope that some of those examples were helpful, and Steph is going to share some examples of LOIs that have already come in. Steph. Thanks,
Colin. Yeah, and as Colin mentioned, so I'm going to highlight 4 examples of the work that pending innovation sites are doing across the country, and these are pending innovation sites that have submitted letters of interest. And I think they also serve as some really great examples for the ways that different organizations and institutions are thinking about and working on building out their local maker ecosystems that are very, very specific to the needs of their communities and reflect the rich history and culture of that community and where they're geographically located. So the first one here is the Pan-African Cultural Heritage Institute, which researches social, cultural, and economic issues and the cultural and connectivity of the people of the African diaspora. The Institute is really interested in exploring the ways in which a network of community-driven and led makerspaces could facilitate the sharing and preservation of the rich culture of making that is taking place across the Southern Black Belt region, and how a network of makerspaces like this could create opportunities for community members to create really thriving businesses while developing innovative solutions to local challenges together. So a MakerUSA program manager that would be embedded at this organization would really focus on examining the feasibility of a network of makerspaces across the Black Belt region. So this manager would be doing outreach to community leaders and key stakeholders and potential partners, and then understanding actually more specifically the unique role that faith-based organizations could have in such an initiative. So if we go to the next slide, located just outside of New York City, Rockland Community College serves a really diverse community, which includes a really large number of immigrant families and English language learners. The college has a 3D print center currently, which serves students, faculty, and local entrepreneurs who've been able to learn the basics of 3D design and printing, and then in some cases have also developed high-end product prototypes. So really supporting that entrepreneurial community there. And a MakerUSA program manager at Rockland Community College would collaborate with the team there to really leverage additional space that the college has scoped out. And that space has been secured to develop and design additional areas for making that could include a recording studio for podcasting and music making, The program manager would also explore the role that micro-credentials could play in really helping to create opportunities for students and community members to develop skills that can be directly connected to their career pathways. And then that manager would also provide support for individualized coaching and guidance on training and resources for student makers as well. If we go to the next slide, Operation Pathways is another organization that has submitted a letter of interest that we're really excited about. So Operations Pathways is a national affordable housing provider. They have really robust services for residents, really focused on supporting mobility from poverty. And Operations Pathways is currently leading a really interesting project called the Multi-Gen Makers Project. And this is a collaboration with residents from Bayview Towers, which is a 200-unit affordable housing complex in Stamford, Connecticut. The project also involves a collaboration with the nonprofit organization CAST, the Center for Applied Special Technology, and Boston University's Social Learning Lab. It's funded by the National Science Foundation. And the idea behind the Multi-Gen Makers Project is really around developing a sustainable model for a multi-generational makerspace. So this is a makerspace that's actually embedded within the affordable housing complex, and it's right there on site. And because the Bayview Towers has and serves residents that are across many different generations, so children, parents, working individuals that are in their 20s and 30s, all the way up to seniors. The idea is to really develop a makerspace that can serve all residents in the ways that they're most interested in using the space. And so a MakerUSA program manager will really focus on learning from and refining the model that's been developed at Bayview Towers. It's been really successful, and actually Operations Pathways is really interested in the opportunity to potentially scale the model with other communities that they work in, partnering with potentially public housing authority partners and a couple of other communities. And then the idea there too is to really, expand a model that creates opportunities for community members from, some of the most marginalized communities to really have access to high quality, informal STEM and maker-centered learning programming. So our fourth example here is from the University of Wyoming. And this is a really interesting one because it's really focused on building out a rural ecosystem of makerspaces. So this is actually a project that's been supported by Governor Mark Gordon, and he has an initiative called the Wyoming Innovation Partnership, which is really focused on supporting and catalyzing innovation and entrepreneurship across the state. And the University of Wyoming has been leading the development of a statewide network of 9+ maker spaces. This ecosystem is going to be connected through what is called the Maker Access Pass. So it's a collaborative cross-institutional training system where community members can take more than 90 different workshops to grow their technical skills and their experiences, ranging from 3D modeling and 3D printing to laser cutting and sewing and soldering. And the idea is that if you go to a makerspace in one part of Wyoming that's part of this network, and then go to another makerspace, you would be able to, if you're trained on one piece of equipment at one makerspace, you could go to another makerspace and be able to use that equipment no problem. So it's really around creating opportunities to make it possible for individuals to use the makerspaces across the state, no matter where they are. The program was developed at Innovation Workshop, which is University of Wyoming's flagship makerspace. And in this particular case, a MakerUSA program manager would really help develop the relationship, structure, and processes needed to develop this statewide ecosystem of spaces. So the spaces have been built, some collaboration has already taken place among the spaces, but the University of Wyoming is really looking to formalize those relationships and really create stronger connections between those spaces across the state, which includes also exploring the role that policy can play at the local, regional, and state level around that. So if we go to the next slide, I just wanted to wrap up this section here by talking about the ways that if you all are interested in engaging with MakerUSA, you can participate. We're really excited. We're always excited to hear from organizations that, feel that they need talent and capacity in this area to get more work done and make more progress and broaden access to these experiences. And so if that resonates with you, we're currently accepting letters of interest from potential innovation sites online. You can go to our website, MakerUSA.org, to check out that form and fill it out. Really, the letter of interest are going to inform the pilot selection, and then also moving down the line after pilot selection, how we scale the program and the initiative. Our goal is really to pilot the first cohort of program managers at innovation sites in late 2022, so a November, December timeframe. You can also feel free to reach out to us at info@makerusa.org if you have a specific question, although we'll have time at the end of this session to also have an engaged conversation and answer any questions you have more specifically about the model. And then if you wanted to learn more about other pending innovation sites beyond the examples that we just shared, you can also find that on our site as well. If we could go to the next slide. I did want to highlight just briefly, in our experience, there's so many great resources that already exist out there around building really inclusive and thriving maker ecosystems. And we just wanted to highlight a few here in case these might be helpful to your own efforts in your community. This is by no means a comprehensive list, but we wanted to kind of just give you all a few resources that could be supportive in different ways. At the top of our list here is the Turning Makerspaces into Greater Places report. This is the Organization Impact and Economic Assessment of Open Works that was led by Coppin State University and Dr. Ron Williams a couple of years ago. And this continues to be just such a great resource for really understanding that impact that makerspaces can play in a community from an economic development perspective, but also from a community development an education perspective as well. And I know so many other communities that have referenced this report in making cases for makerspaces and maker education in their own communities. Maker City is a collection of real case studies and examples of how communities are really taking their own unique approach to building their maker ecosystems. The Maker Learning Leadership Framework. This is a framework developed by Digital Promise to help more specifically school leaders create sustainable maker programs. This one is actually more geared towards school leaders in the K-12 space. And then the Remake Learning Playbook, which is a field guide of just different ideas and resources for building innovation networks for teaching and learning. And this was developed by the Remake Learning Network, which is based in the Pittsburgh, Western Pennsylvania area. I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Colin, who will be sharing some best practices around ecosystem building based on work we've done with the diverse set of communities that we've collaborated with over the years.
Thanks so much, Steph. Really excited to share some additional examples coming from Makers and Mentors Network, which I know Steph and I referenced in our introduction. This is now a network of over 20 STEM and maker ecosystems. And A few years back, we had a third-party evaluator do both quantitative and qualitative research on the development of those ecosystems and looking for commonalities across those that were particularly successful. And so we wanted to highlight some of that as we think about maker ecosystem development, and as you think about your own community within West Baltimore, within the greater Baltimore region. And I think ecosystems can also be even neighborhood based as well. And so we wanted to share some of the phasing that third-party evaluators found to be most successful within our network. I'll highlight kind of high level, and we can also follow up with this entire presentation for any folks who are interested in it. You can reach out to us at that info@makerusa.org email address. So from a phase one standpoint, certainly building the action team, identifying the core group of stakeholders that will kickstart the effort. What is the expertise needed? What is the resources needed? And then selecting and supporting a very strong backbone organization, ideally an organization that already has some of the DNA around collaboration within organizations within that community, building a steering committee, and then building a staffing plan around that. And I think our hope is programs like the MakerUSA model can be a support to some of that staffing plan. Phase two, really understanding community needs and goals before setting out on specific program activities. Successful ecosystems understand the needs and goals of their community. This can be done through a variety of sort of research, primary, secondary, community asset and needs mapping, and developing that prior to actually executing on a year one strategy. And then developing a shared vision and ultimately a sustainability approach. Obviously, I think funding is core to all of our work, but anchoring in community needs first, and then building a fundraising strategy around that is what we found. Communities that are continuing the work year after year has been the sequencing and approach that they've taken. Launching a community action plan that is based first on pilots. So kind of starting with pilot smaller sets of projects within the early years has been, I think, what we've seen to be most successful. Evaluate from those, iterate, and grow upon that. And I think, ecosystems are central to the success of maker education, ultimately being able to better connect with local manufacturing and local entrepreneurship resources within a community. And the stronger that collaboration muscle is, the more effective maker education can ultimately be in driving innovation, in driving new business creation, and in driving career pathways into local businesses as well. And I think we're near kind of the close and the wrap up to our session. We really hope that some of the examples of both the letters of interest that have already been submitted to the program, some of the examples of work that MakerUSA program managers could support, could potentially align with your own organizations, and would love for folks to either ask any questions live in today's conversation or follow up with us offline. And if there's any answers or questions that we can answer as it relates to the model or maker education more broadly, we'd be really excited to share upon that. And then also just kind of thinking about what are your organization's challenges and opportunities as it relates to ecosystem development, especially ecosystem development that's specific to maker education and entrepreneurship. What are some of the needs? What are some of the assets and resources to address those challenges and address those opportunities? We'd love to hear live if folks would like to share, and thinking about what role your organization can play in supporting that ecosystem development that ultimately fosters economic inclusion and innovation. I'm going to let Steph close out, but just a deep appreciation to this network, to this community, to Coppin State University, and all those who have made this conference possible. And again, we're hopeful that there'll be opportunities to collaborate. So I'll pass back to you, Steph.
Thanks, Colin. Thank you so much for joining us for this session. We're very much looking forward to chatting with you and learning more about your work and how we might be able to help support your efforts in Baltimore. And please feel free to reach out to us even after the session is completed via email or via our website, makerusa.org, for more information. Thank you so much.